Now we will be starting a panel discussion session now. We have members of JCI to implement actual action. I would like to hand it over to Ms. Masako Konishi, Expert Director of Conservation and Energy, WWF Japan.
Thank you. We will start the panel discussion, Frontier of Climate Action 2020. I serve as the moderator, Masako Konishi. At this panel discussion, members of the JCI, different sectors are represented. All the organizations are people in the field, in the front line in this unprecedented pandemic. Still, going back to a better world, build back better, and how to embed the climate changes. We look forward to their comments. Introducing the panelists, first of all. From Daiichi Seimei Life Insurance, General Manager of Responsible Investment Department, Ms. Hiroko Ishii. Very nice to join you. The second year of Tokyo Metropolitan Senior High School, Ms. Saori Iwano. Thank you for the invitation. From Kyoto City, Supervising Director, Global Energy and Energy Policy, Mr. Kazuhiro Inoda. Nice to see you all. General Manager, Chairperson for Odawara Hakone Chamber of Commerce Industry, Executive Vice President, Suzuhiro Kamaboko, Mr. Teisuke Suzuki. Thank you very much. General Manager, Sustainability Department and ESG Promotion Department, Marui Group, Ms. Yokoseki Izaki. So from diverse sectors, we will hear their insight. So first of all, under this pandemic, still climate actions are required. What are implemented and what are the thoughts? I ask for 3 minutes each of initial comments. First of all, Ms. Ishii.
Thank you. My name is Ishii from Daiichi Life. At Daiichi Life, as an universal owner, in this COVID-19, ESG investment as well as engagement with companies is what we do. With this expansion of COVID-19 pandemic, social sustainability is now in question, and therefore the work on ESG, its importance is increasing. At Daiichi Life, in this topic of ESG, climate change is what we have focused on in our activities. Life insurance company, this business itself is to hand over assets to the next generation. So this rich Earth's environment must be passed on to the next generation. That is what we consider as our mission. So despite COVID-19, our focus on climate change does not change. Look at this slide. This is what we have been doing in the past. The first is create positive impact by investing in renewable energy. We have been doing this for some time now. 220 billion is the total so far. And we have stopped financing coal thermal power plants and coal mining projects. It's not just not investing in these things. CO2 emissions, with companies have such high levels of emissions, we engage in dialogue to carry out engagement to urge them to go low carbon. This was assessed highly, and in February of 2020, from the Environment Ministry, we have received ESG Finance Award Japan. We've received the Gold Investor Prize. With carbon footprint measurement, we would like to build our portfolio towards decarbonization. Next slide, please. In this slide, this is our policy going forward. In April, ESG Investment Policy was announced by us, and by 2023, we have 36 trillion yen in assets under management. In the investment policy, ESG is to be incorporated, and we intend to double assets in ESG. As for our stewardship activities this year, focus themes are COVID-19, climate change, and waste plastic. And TCFG, our analysts would conduct the analysis of financial impact, and we are promoting ESG integration work as part of TCFD. And with other investors, we conduct collaborative engagement with other investors to enhance our influence on business corporations. Lastly, this isn't in one of the slides, but in April, with the proxy voting criteria, even if engage with companies, if decarbonization is not making progress, we would vote against nomination of director for such a company. This is one of our means to urge companies to work on climate change. That is all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We will come back to that later. From the city of Kyoto, Mr. Inoda. Thank you, Inoda of the Kyoto City government. Thank you for this opportunity. We are a local government. It is the city of Kyoto, and what we are doing as non-state actor. I have PowerPoint at the left-hand side above. This is what actions Kyoto is taking. In May of last year, Kyoto City hosted the IPCC session. There was a symposium, and Mayor Kadokawa, Mr. Kadokawa, announced the Kyoto appeal to achieve 1.5 degrees, that we target the net zero emission by 2050. That determination was shown. On the right-hand side is the logo mark. There is an overlap with the SDG. That is why this color wheel was chosen to go zero by 2050. That is the determination resolution of the city that was announced. After all, in Kyoto, this is the place where the Kyoto Protocol was adopted back in 1997. And therefore, as the city of Kyoto, we want to take the leadership in terms of climate change. We have been advocating to a population, and with this announcement, it's once again placing our foot on the accelerator, so to say. After 97, we are trying to go to another level. Ever since our announcement in May last year, what we have been doing in the last 18 months, and that is shown on the lower half. After the announcement, action is required. What to do? The city government alone cannot achieve. As a pathway to achievement, sense of crisis must be shared by the population, residents, and the businesses of Kyoto. We have Kyoto City, a global warming ordinance, and we decided to update the city ordinance. In order to revise the ordinance, we have the City Environmental Council, including academics and industry leaders. There must be careful discussion. There will be a public comment. And until 2 days ago, we had been inviting public comment. 462 comments from 278 parties have come. And we are just about reading and studying the public comments. And in the City Assembly next month, this will be on the agenda. As a local government, in ordinance to explicitly mention net zero by 2050, then careful due diligence step is required. So that pathway is shown on the left-hand side below. On the right-hand side, under the ordinance, our responsibilities, obligations will be mentioned, and the actual actions will be included in the plan. The plan is also working. Lifestyles, business, energy, mobilities all have to be transformed. There are many that needs to be done, but numerical targets will be established, and in the last 10 years until 2030, that's a decade of action. So CO2 reduced by more than 45%, renewable ratio to be 35%, and the Kyoto City global warming measure plans are working.
Thank you very much. Let us go to Miss Iwano. She's currently having final test season, so she's preparing for the exams, but out of that schedule, she's joining us. She's the second-year student in high school. Youth for One Earth, Fridays for Future. I'm active in such activities. My name is Iwano. Sorry for joining you online only. Now, Youth for One Earth. By connecting various sectors from the young generation, we want to create a movement and increase the size of the movement to call for climate change responses. From February, we gathered 100 young people from across Japan, and we organized a Student Climate Crisis Summit. Youth for One Earth is comprised of 3 bodies, including Fridays for Future Japan, Climate Youth Japan, and No Youth, No Japan. And I'm also active as an organizer of Fridays for Future Japan. And the picture that you see on the screen is some of the activities we did as part of Fridays for Future Japan. Now, the impact of COVID-19, including Fridays for Future, young people's demonstrations have become active from last year, but because of spread of COVID-19, we are no longer able to conduct physical demonstrations or marches. So we need to think of new ways to express our wills and intention through new actions and new movements. So what we do at Youth for One Earth is that despite the COVID-19 pandemic, we want to connect young activists across Japan online to conduct strong climate activities. So we have been providing support by creating platforms and sharing information. One of the outcome of that is that in May, we had a tweet storm organized by Fridays for Future. We did the online climate march. And in September, as can be seen on the slide, we used shoes and placards rather than bodies of people. We organized a shoes auction, and this was conducted at 75 locations in 32 prefectures. Even in situations where people cannot physically gather, we can use various tools and methods to continue with this strong movement of young people so that we can create a forum to express our opinions, calling for ambitious climate measures. And the role of Youth for One Earth is to connect these young people to create a larger force. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have these kind of high school students in Japan, very encouraging. Next, Mr. Suzuki of the Odawara Hakone Chamber of Commerce. Thank you. I am not doing my exam, and I am joining from Odawara. My company is about 100 kilometers south of Tokyo in the city of Odawara. Kamaboko has been made, and we are celebrating the 250th anniversary. The city of Odawara is an advanced country. By 2050, CO2 zero emission has been announced, and we have been elected. And we are also chosen as a platform company by the ministries, and local SMEs are working together to promote local energy production and consumption. The pandemic occurred, and the city of Odawara, the adjacent town is Hakone. 20 million of tourists come to Hakone per annum. And of course, we enjoyed a large number of visitors, but tourism is struck heavily. The worst period was April and May, but because of the Go To campaign and other subsidies, tourists are returning. But on the whole, there is only about 70% or 80% of tourists coming compared to ordinary years. During the weekend, we do see visitors, but the hotel people say that only 70% of their rooms are operating. So not all the rooms are made available, and inbound there is none arriving from outside Japan. And October, November, during this tourism season, normally there would be loads of buses, but that's almost nil. So tourism industry is one of the largest hit amongst all the industries struggling under the pandemic, and difficult time will continue. So the number of visitors will continue to be difficult. The revenue has to be maintained, so we have to make it more expensive for the customers, but we cannot do it unilaterally. So how we can offer larger values to our customers and visitors so that they will spend more when they visit. This applies to entire Japan, but considering the tourism industry, how to conduct this business, it is a positive opportunity to change the business. Under pandemic, for example, the bullet train and the highways, the companies are going bankrupt, and teleworking, work at home, work style life is changing. Or rather than concentrating everything in Tokyo, decentralization being advocated. So what is ongoing right now, what is happening now because of the pandemic, this might have happened without the pandemic, I feel. So at the moment, what we are experiencing now, if this had been the future anyway, the future will arrive sometime. So rather than trying to go back to before the pandemic, efforts must be made towards the new future. Corporate managers will think about their own business as an individual person, how to continue to live and work with vitality. I think this is the opportunity to rethink. There is a flip, I think, or a flip or a slide. A forthcoming future, I think, is what we want to envision. Because I am the chair of the Odawara Hakone Chamber of Commerce, there is the joint statement of Odawara Hakone, One Team Declaration on Climate Change. We are an organization of SME management, but the top of SMEs do not think climate change as their own issues. They think about the other side of the world, or they think it's the responsibility of leaders of global companies. But 1 year ago, Odawara Hakone suffered from Typhoon Hagibis. There were lots of disasters, and the region was significantly shattered by the typhoon. So now, even ourselves, SME management, understand that climate change is our business, not only the business of global companies. So, joint statement of Odawara Hakone, the mayors of Hakone, mayor of Odawara, and both the city and the town assemblies, and both the community organizations of Odawara Hakone have come together. A total of 7 organizations are participating in this joint statement of one team. On October 27th, there will be an official signature and announcement. So the economy, citizens, and the local government, all stakeholders will have a correct understanding and correct sense of crisis, and do whatever each of us can do. So we want to take action, and it should be a kick-off on the 27th of this month. Thank you for your attention.
So this COVID-19 accelerated our future by 10 years. From Marui Group, Sekizaki-san, please. My name is Sekizaki from Marui Group. Thank you very much for this opportunity today. With this COVID-19, it was unexpected, and many unexpected things are happening, dealing a big blow to the society. This is going to be a protracted war at Marui Group. With the emergency declaration, all shops were closed temporarily, and from June, they started to be reopened, but the impacts could be felt in many places. While dealing a blow to the society with COVID-19, our future is being accelerated. It's coming quicker than we thought. Decarbonized society. I think this could prove to be an opportunity to create such a society. With climate change, global warming, environmental issues, social challenges, people's awareness of the issue has been raised. At Marui Group, in July of 2018, we joined RE100 so that by 2030, we will achieve renewable energy 100%. A retailer uses a lot of electricity. It's twice as much as a plant in terms of energy usage per unit of area. Most of CO2 origin is from electricity, so energy conservation is not going to do enough. We need to change the content of the energy we use, and that is why we changed our course towards renewable energy. With independent power producers, we're working with them. We started from Shinjuku Marui, the main office, main branch, but this year, 15 shops, 5 facilities, RE 50% is projected. Next page, please. Another thing, we have shops and we have cars. These are important assets and resources for us. We have contact points with our clients. So we want to offer our clients the option of renewable energy. So starting this September, for EPOS card members, we work with Minna Denryoku to offer them the option of using renewable energy. It's cumbersome going through the procedures. So with a smartphone and the meter reading, they can sign up so that the hurdle for people could be lowered. So this is called Minna Denryoku Renewable Project. If everybody works on this together, it could be a large force to reduce emissions. That is what we want to achieve. And with EPOS card, if they were thinking of allowing them to pay for electricity charges with EPOS card, which means that we will have a prolonged contact with customers, and this can be connected to business benefits. That is all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Because of the pandemic, all parties have suffered, but they have not stopped advancement by thinking ingenuously. After my first round of question, because this is a valuable opportunity with participants from different sectors, you are all welcome to ask questions amongst yourself. Starting with the city of Kyoto, it is known by Kyoto Protocol. Kyoto is the leader to promote measures against climate change, and now the ordinance is to be revised. You have just collected public comments. What is the reaction overall? So everybody is still working hard despite the pandemic, not crushed? In fact, until Sunday, we had accepted the public comments. So 278 stakeholders reacted. So we are calculating, collecting, and analyzing the comments. So on the whole, the response is that Kyoto City should be even more proactive, be more concrete in our actions. Most of the comments are encouragement, but some of the comments do mention about the pandemic, that the businesses and industries are suffering, and therefore too much care for global warming, that they need more support. There are such comments. We heard from Mr. Suzuki of the city of Odawara. In the case of Kyoto City as well, in May, compared to last year, there was a 97% reduction in the people who stayed in accommodation, including hotels. Freshly built hotels cannot open their operation. So the pandemic impact is huge. In order to deal with the global warming, it is very difficult. The city of Kyoto has set up a headquarters to control the infections, where there are clusters that have occurred in eating places. Teams have visited places, and as of September, there has been no clusters of infection in eating and drinking places, but the business environment is difficult. But at the same time, the global environment must be maintained. Very difficult. So under this pandemic, to do more to take care of the environment, what might be the policies? The small and medium-sized enterprises are suffering, and to prepare for climate change, it's not only perseverance or patience, and it's not only actions that are going to be expensive. It might require patience, and it might need some budget, but energy reporting program is implemented. How much gas, water, energy is consumed. We are asking businesses to grasp their actual consumption, to compare with their peers, and to raise awareness, to reduce the cost and expense. And the Kyoto Prefecture, Kyoto City's subsidies are advocated so that taking care of the environment should be a contribution to the business, win-win of the business and taking care of the earth. Such menus are prepared and careful explanation is provided to the industry to be effective. In order to transition, it should be kind to the environment, but it should also revitalize the local economy. That is a positive opportunity. Thank you very much. Same with Mr. Suzuki. I think I heard the same message. So Kyoto City, what might be your most important policy at this moment? The city ordinance is about to be revised. So the city and the prefecture is working on this, but about the architecture, when new buildings are to be erected, currently under the current rule, 2,000 square meters or larger, there are mandatory solar panels and other requirements. But in order to be net zero by 2050, it will be 300 square meters or larger buildings that will be subject to mandatory renewable energy use. Solar or other renewables will be mandatory for new construction. For businesses and for the house owners, this might be an extra burden, but to the relevant industries, to the organizations, we are visiting and explaining to them that there will be more ambitious regulations. Kyoto was a city known to be proactive in global warming countermeasures, so I think we can say that the people are accepting, and we will explain carefully about this new policy. But this is only for Kyoto, so it's a kind of a public relations that we are going to have a stringent rule. So 2,000 square meters or larger building had a mandatory renewable targets, so it will be 300 square meters or larger. So everybody would be subject, like having little condominium or apartment. Yes, 300 square meters is not too large. It's like a middle-sized apartment. Apartment owners who rent, they will need to place solar panels, for example. So 35% of solar, that is one of the goals. So indeed, the use of renewable will become mandatory even for smaller buildings, which is going to be newly constructed. So 35% of renewable by 2030, that is a clear target, and therefore you are forcefully advancing towards achievement. Thank you very much. Now inviting Mr. Suzuki. As you mentioned, Hakone and Odawara, the two municipalities, are working together, and you are preparing to officially announce the joint statement on climate change, a one-team declaration. And you have done this under this pandemic. Indeed. The one-team joint statement of Odawara, Hokkaido on climate change in the post Corona and with Corona era, the new economy, new community. There is a subtitle to our One Team declaration. The matter of climate change and the pandemic, they are not separate matters. They are deeply linked. But people may think that it's too hard to deal with global warming under this pandemic, that the companies are busy enough, confused enough with the pandemic. But if you think carefully, in order to recover from the impact of pandemic, climate change cannot be avoided. And I mentioned about the forthcoming future. What is our vision? What are the keywords of the forthcoming future? Indeed, decarbonization, a circulatory economy, or decentralization rather than concentration. I may sound like the Ministry of Environment, but all are interrelated. Without dealing with climate change at this moment, we will suffer because of the environmental changes, but at the same time, if we do not deal with the climate change, we will be kicked out of the global value chain. Not only matter for global large enterprises, because we SMEs, we are all connected in the supply chain down to the downstream. So this is the message we're explaining. And because we are facing the crisis of the pandemic, in order to recover from this economic damage, that is the very reason why we have to be proactive in dealing with global warming. That is our message to the stakeholders. So because of the pandemic, the businesses will have to be stronger so that you can jump, leap in the future. Indeed, yes. Whether we can really jump, but at least we should avoid bankruptcy. Thank you very much. So, in order to revitalize a local economy, what is most important for the SMEs? As a small and medium-sized enterprise, they might want to play golf and do other activities, but only when the local community is active can SMEs survive and be active. So in order to make your business stronger, the community has to be strong. If the community is shrinking, your own business also shrinks. There is that awareness. How to revitalize the local community is the challenge. First of all, the capital and money must be flowing within the local community. A scale economy is difficult in a local region, but in the city of Otawara, on an annual basis, that population is 200,000, but about 30 billion yen of electricity is purchased from outside. But even if 10% of that energy can be locally produced and locally produced, which means that would be a saving of 30 billion yen spent on purchased electricity, that can be used for other purposes to revitalize the community. So energy purchase accounts for a large part of climate countermeasures, but this is directly linked to climate change measures. Thank you very much. When I learned about the public comments, 10% of renewable by 2030, and I had wondered whether it was 10%. Already 70% of renewable is connected to the grid, but within the local community, to create the electricity on your own where you have been purchasing from outside, yes. All the energy balances are in deficit by local governments across Japan, so we work hard and pay for the purchased electricity. So we are paying our money for the electricity, which is capital outflow. That should be reduced. Indeed, there were lots of hints and clues, lessons learned to revitalize the local community. Then for businesses and to induce investment behavior changes, to guide investment actions. Daiichi has been discussing this. For example, financing for coal-related businesses. Already 2 years ago, it has been mentioned. You are indeed the front runner. But thinking about business liability, you are a life insurer, so long-term perspective is important. But giving priority to long-term perspective, then the investees with the risk, they will be excluded?
Well, we are a life insurance company. We are a long-term investor. So basically, once we make an investment, we hold that investment for the long term. And when we do that, ESG work, if it is progressing at the company over the mid to long term, corporate value tends to go up. That is our view. Conversely speaking, if the company is not working enough on ESG, for example, if governance is not so strong, for such corporations, some scandals could emerge or accidents could take place. The probability of that happening would go up. So we have to guard against that downside risk. To prevent such risk, ESG, work on climate change, would become important in our view.
So scandals do come when you start worrying about the governance problems. Indeed, you have past experiences. Thank you. Downside risk. For example, if coal businesses are discontinued, then there could be the lack of the residual investment. Despite that background, to be a forerunner, what is the advantage?
Well, in the end, work on climate change, when this is spreading globally on the ground, right now there is more focus on engagement, but divestment is also progressing at some investors. So coal, companies that are working on coal, investment into such companies will be withdrawn more and more. Then the corporate value of that corporation is going to go down. So everybody would start selling and divesting. And when you notice it, the share price would have gone down. So in the end, the people who were selling earlier on could have prevented losses. If you come at the end, you'd suffer large losses. So earlier the better in terms of timing of getting started.
So yes, there is the forerunner's benefit, and it's enjoying profit larger, not to pick up the joker. Having said that, under the pandemic, companies are suffering hugely. At the same time, there must be lots of engagement for climate change. No change in your policy?
Well, now, Japanese companies, we are dealing with many of them. And when it comes to the issue of climate change activities, from last year, companies' mindset has rapidly changed, because until last year, in terms of disclosure in their integrated reporting, there was not much mention in their reports. But this year, if we look at their integrated reports, TCFD disclosure has been improved so much. Detailed analysis is provided in this reporting. So the work done by these corporations has accelerated. At least that's our impression. So given that situation, yes, with COVID-19, some companies are struggling. I understand that. But COVID, this may be wishful thinking, but we could see vaccine to be developed, and this could be contained sometime soon. While climate change is going to be with us for several decades, this is a challenge that we have to work on for the next decades. So we cannot stand still. That is what we are telling corporations.
Thank you for the clear comments. Ms. Iwano, as a high school student, so there are adults also working hard, according to the discussion that we have just heard. So, Ms. Iwano, in order to stimulate your peer youth around you, at least in Japan, compared to Europe and the United States, fewer Japanese might be interested. What are the difficulties that you're feeling?
Well, yes. Environmental issues. Having an awareness of that issue among young people, I would say that the number of such young people is increasing. But climate change, on the topic of climate change, there's the scientific component. So how can you contribute to that issue? It's very difficult to imagine your own contribution. So there are many young people who are not able to regard that issue as their own. It is true that it is hard to have that awareness of the issue on a personal level. That's probably why this movement is not getting so much bigger. And young people's awareness and the citizens in general are not able to have this awareness, and that is why this was considered not high on the priority list of people. I also have been engaged in various activities, and my classmates at high school say that they cannot really understand the structure of how climate change can be improved, and they don't know how they can contribute.
Later on, we will hear more from the representative of MURTON. So, Ms. Iwano, school education has been largely impacted as well. What are personal observations because of the pandemic?
Right. I go to the Metropolitan High School. It's a public school. In the past, various tools were used to provide education, but the school was not contemplating usage of a variety of tools, and the problem has been laid bare. Class teaching to be provided to students, when we receive such teaching, and there's clear disparity or differences amongst students receiving such education, the times for class teaching is now reduced. So because the time has been reduced in terms of the classwork that we do, you need to be able to manage the spare time you have on your own to pursue your studies. What you want to do and what you need to study, balancing the two, is now left up to the individual. So after school reopening, how you were able to manage your time, your spare time, to use it effectively, the difference is now starkly clear. So students must take the initiative to manage their own study time. So whether such ability has been fostered or not, that became clear as a result of COVID-19.
I'm so moved about what you are telling me, because adults think about the teachers, IT literacy and infrastructure at the schools, but the students have to learn about how to learn and adapt themselves as students. And MURTON, indeed, the EPIS card business The company itself is trying to go 100% renewable, but to the community as a whole, you are trying to provide a means to realize net zero.
Yes. Through our business, how can you solve social and environmental issues? That is asked of companies, and that will be asked more in the future. So what can we do through our core business? What kind of social contribution we can make? Renewable energy fits that requirement very nicely. We have customers, consumers. They have a high level of interest in the environment, but as Ms. Iwano said, people don't know what they should do. So companies can offer them options. This is possible, that is possible. We have to give them a menu of options, leveraging the strength of that company. And we thought that at Marui Group, we have our own product and services. We wanted to turn everything renewable energy 100%. So we wanted to make another step forward. We wanted to offer that to customers and the society so that our power may be small, but we want to generate as much social impact as possible. And we thought that it would be great if more companies wanted to do that. So we started this as a challenge opportunity. But power, electricity, seems visible, but it's really not so visible. So recommending that to our customers did have a higher hurdle. We thought about how we can convey our message to our customers. I, myself, and other people, we were wondering how we can spread this notion of renewable energy to our customers. We're still going through the trial and error.
Thank you very much. At Marui, using your card business and changing the electricity use, that's going to be a viable business commercially?
As I said earlier, credit cards is an accumulation business. By customers not just holding on to such cards, we want to have customers use our cards over the long term. We are moving cashless. People make payments with credit cards, utility charges, mobile phone, water, electricity. If EPOS card is used for such payments, then this card is always in your wallet, which means that we can have relationship with our customers over the long term. And in this long-term relationship, we want to give a return to our customers, return benefits to our customers. So it's not going to be just limited to electricity. We want to have many mechanisms to allow our customers to use our cards. This would enhance our engagement with our customers, leading to our mid to long-term benefit as well. There's that potential.
So in your core business, it is commercially viable, and at the same time, it is a service to your customers and kind to the earth. It's a positive loop. Thank you, Ms. Ueno. I hope you will be encouraged. If you have any questions amongst yourselves, Ms. Ueno, any question to your fellow panelists?
Thank you for the opportunity. Kyoto City. I have a question for the city of Kyoto, Mr. Inada. It may be true for other local governments. Climate change countermeasures at the local government level or at corporations level, as a perspective, I don't know if it is right for me to say from my viewpoint, but from the viewpoint of a young person's perspective may be valuable, and it may be an important perspective in climate change countermeasures, because climate change, one of the features is that the younger the generation, the larger the impact will be. And the decisions taken in terms of climate change countermeasures is a long-term one. So in its planning, once you go into the implementation stage, it is conceivable that young people will be incorporated. So young people's perspective is going to be important in climate change countermeasures. So in that perspective, how young people's perspectives are incorporated in your decision-making?
Yes, please. Indeed, we invited public comments, and there were comments from teenagers as well. As you mentioned, I'm not sure about the exact date, but indeed, the Friday for Future youth activists, together with such younger people, we are going to organize some kind of a meeting. At least there is going to be an opportunity for dialogue with the younger generation. Just as you mentioned, we want to carefully listen to the opinions of the younger generation and do whatever we can. It is our intention to do so. So indeed, the opportunities, we do have what we call Eco-Sen, or Ecological Center. We are trying to listen to the voices of as many stakeholders as possible. Thank you. So the key of JCI is that people with different background come together. You can talk to others whom you have no contact in your daily activities, and sustainable future is the keyword. So I hope that Kyoto and Friday for the Future can collaborate going forward. Any further questions amongst yourselves?
From Marui, I have a question for Ms. Ishii. We often have opportunities to talk with the investors, and as you mentioned earlier, corporations' behavior, a trigger for change, some keywords. For example, if you press this button, companies are likely to change. If you have any thoughts about that, I'd like to know. Well, corporations changing from within is difficult. That is often discussed. It's very difficult to change from within. So when investors like ourselves go to them, and if we repeat certain things, and if that message is conveyed to the top leader, it's quite effective and influential. That's what we hear. So when you have dialogue with investors like us, and if you find something that you really wanted to do, pick it up and take it to your seniors. Let the senior people know. That will be the most effective.
That was very convincing. Thank you. Indeed, you have a silver bullet. If you press this button, everybody moves. By co-working and collaboration, institutional investors using that title and the status to try even to convince your bosses, that could be effective. Thank you. In fact, Mr. Suzuki, in the panel discussion 2 years ago, we have been working together. Straightforward, frank messages has been very impressive. Mr. Suzuki, of course, you represent the Chamber of Commerce of Odawara Hakone, but you're also the Vice President of Suzuhiro Kamaboko Company Limited. As the Executive Vice President of Kamaboko Company, what is the pandemic impact? A very big impact, not ended, still ongoing, very hard impact. Because we are making food, we might be immune from pandemic, but that is not the case. Our kamaboko food, this is a luxury fish-based kamaboko. It's not a daily necessity. Supermarkets are crowded, but in our case of luxury kamaboko, department stores had to close, and souvenir shops had to close their businesses like April, May. We have suffered hugely. People are suffering about lack of revenue, including myself, but the amount of money circulation, that should be the same in total, unless it has evaporated. So why is people lacking access to capital? There are some representatives from financial institutions here. So the capital money must be stuck somewhere. So the stock price remains high despite this unprecedented circumstance. So there must be healthy circulation of capital in the community. That I think is important. So those who do have the money, they do have money, but I hope that there will be healthy circulation of the capital, so that there could be healthy spending of the money, that there will be a positive circulation of the capital, and as SMEs, we want to think hard what can be done. Thank you. So from an SME management perspective, it's a great lesson for us. There are lots of difficulties behind the scene, the city of Kyoto and the town of Hakone, 90% reduction of tourist visitors. Despite those difficulties, we have to cheer and support all the people suffering. And because of Typhoon Hagibis last year, Hakone was also strongly impacted. But climate action measures also have to be undertaken at the same time. May I? Yes, please. About the tourism. And Kyoto is also suffering from a lack of visitors. But with the Go To central government campaign, there are recovery of tourism. But as I listen to hotels and the Japanese inns, the higher end accommodation, there are more visitors. I am grateful to the Go To campaign. I do not disagree. But there are also middle and small-sized hotels. Why top-end hotels are reserved earlier by Go To campaign? Because you are subsidized, and 100,000 yen per night, that's too expensive normally. But with the Go To campaign, you have the subsidies of 30,000 to 40,000 yen. That's nothing wrong. But from the business provider side, it's going to be rather difficult. So whether those customers will remain as repeat is probably difficult, because without subsidies it is going to be too expensive. And meanwhile, souvenir shops and the ordinary visitors to hotels, they probably cannot come during this pandemic. So of course something like a camphor, yes, such a kind of stimulus is important, but long-term support for the businesses and industries is also very important. This is my observation in the latest 1 or 2 weeks. Thank you. Thank you for your very frank opinion. I'm sure that many people have been moved. So finally, like within 30 seconds or 60 seconds, your final comment to the audience, Ms. Ishii.
Yes. In this COVID-19 pandemic, digitalization is progressing at an accelerated rate. With COVID, digitization within a short span of time has progressed as much as 10 years impact. And around the world, everyone worked on digitalization. And similarly, same thing can be done with climate change, I believe. If everybody works on this together around the world to work on climate change, we could have progress that could be achieved, otherwise would have been achieved in 10 years. So we should turn this into an opportunity.
Ms. Iwano?
This year, there are many events, both internationally as well as domestic policy-wise. And with regard to young people's activity, Climate Youth Japan Local Conference for Youth, as well as Fridays for Future. Today, a conference is organized, Energy Mix, Review, Action, as well as Action for COP26, and Youth Know Japan for the lower house election. Various events are being organized this year. So such developments revolving around the young people should be expanded and made more stronger. So people in businesses as well as non-state actors, cooperation would be essential to have rapid decarbonization. Various activities in different areas and tech sectors must work together. Let's work together.
Thank you. I look forward to your activities. Mr. Inoda. The City of Kyoto, we are updating the city ordinance as was introduced. In the preamble, the goal is 0 by 2050. That is our goal. And the name of this ordinance, we want to call it Zero Carbon City Ordinance. In the next fiscal year, that will be year 1 of execution, which will be a very important year. As the government, I have explained about what the city is doing as local government authorities, but incinerator combustion, we are also one of the largest emitter as a business operator. So we are asking the businesses and residents to reduce, but as the city, because we are also a big emitter, we have to do a lot on our own. As a business enterprise, as a city, as a big emitter, we will do our utmost. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Suzuki. My position is across the world, there are SME management, and this is my message too. The SME management, climate change, action into decarbonization is, after all, a stimulus to local economy. It is the business of everybody. It is the accountability of everybody. How to contribute to the climate environment in the core business is important. Thank you very much. And from Maduri, please.
With COVID, what I felt strongly is that you need partnership in order to overcome the problem. The same is true for climate change. Each one of us, each company, each entity, working on their own is not sufficient. It's a matter of how we can work together. That's what's important. Everyone working together and everyone working on an individual level. Strength of companies and assets of companies should be leveraged as we work together. That is needed. And as Marui Group, we will do what we can do to work with our customers to enhance our efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. That was about the SDG 17, Partnership by All. Indeed, at JCA, we have so many stakeholders from different backgrounds having difficulty in the front line in the field, but they were all encouraging messages. As Mr. Yoshi, change can happen. That also will be my closing comment. Please express our gratitude to all the panelists and to everybody beyond the display. Thank you very much. Thank you. You are all responsible for climate change actions, whatever the sector or position you are in. We have heard a lot and exactly what we wanted to hear from diverse stakeholders to be win-win in both the pandemic control and the climate control. I am sure that there were lots of lessons learned for the audiences. We now have Minister of the Environment, Mr. Shinjiro Koizumi. So let us invite Mr. Koizumi. The floor is yours, sir. Thank you. Thank you for the kind invitation. I am Shinjiro Koizumi, Minister of Environment. Finally, JCI, your member has gone beyond 500. Congratulations indeed. Clap, clap, clap. Indeed. To the JCI gathering, I joined you in New York about 1 year ago. Back at that time, myself and all of the members of JCI, no one thought that by 1 year the membership would have gone beyond 500. The movement of the government Japan, when I took office as the minister, I had not imagined that we would be like this after 1 year. Many had not expected we would advance. During my first term, what I did was I tried to review our export policy of coal thermal, in principle, that we should not finance or support export of coal thermal and the domestic inefficient coal thermal by 2030, that they must be faded out. METI has announced that, and the private sector is active. The 3 mega banks of Japan, going forward, the project finance would be stopped for coal projects, and the non-insurers, they would not contract insurance for coal. So all of a sudden, there is a rising momentum to withdraw from coal. Together with JCI, we have managed to create this momentum together with you, which makes me very happy. And this time, I was the Minister of Environment for Abe government, and I've been reappointed under the new Suga administration. And by no mistake, new actions are emerging. The ruling parties, LDP and the Komeito Party, they have agreed on the ruling coalition agreement, and from number 1 to number 9 in the ruling coalition agreement, in number 7, establishment of a decarbonized society, promotion of climate change measures, these 2 goals have been included. Number 8 is diplomacy and security. Number 9, revision of the constitution. And right before that, a climate change measure is included in the coalition agreement between the ruling parties LDP and Komeito. This is a huge breakthrough. This means that the rising momentum to decarbonization is considered not only an environmental matter, but it is now recognized as a national security issue. It is indeed a turning point of the government of Japan. Ever since I became the Minister for Environment, by 2050, the goal of the government, 80% CO2 emissions should not be the case. By 2050, it should be realizing the complete decarbonization, 0 emission by 2050. To make the goal more ambitious, I have been working inside the government, and going forward, I want to continue to work with JCI, local government authorities, and with the industries in order to further strengthen this momentum in my second term, and I am going to harvest the fruit of my effort. The corporate efforts has been introduced during this event, and the efforts of the local government authorities by 2050 to realize decarbonized society. Many local government authorities have announced that there was only 4 when I took office, and now 158 local government authorities have declared, and more than 70 million of the population are covered. So more than half of the Japanese population are covered in local government authorities that have declared 0 emission by 2050, a huge movement. So this has to be supported by policy, and this should also become the goal of the central government. And by this goal, to realize decarbonized community, to transit to decarbonized, and transit to circular economy, and transit to decentralized economy, the 3 transition must be accelerated rather than going back to pre-corona economy. To envision the post-corona world, it should be a new, sustainable, and resilient future. We must redesign. Redesign is what we have to be able to do. I want to do it with you. JCI, your membership has gone beyond 500 at this turning point, and the Japanese Parliament will start the session again. And by no mistake, efforts of decarbonization will have to be discussed, and I will do my utmost. I look forward to working together with you. Let us do our utmost together.
Thank you very much. As Minister Koizumi said, Japan's reduction targets should be raised. A review of climate change countermeasures has started. And if a clear signal is sent from the Japanese government, Japan as a whole, our effort could be accelerated. JCI, local governments, consumers, and other entities, 500 of them have gathered at JCI. And given this status, such a signal, once it is disseminated from the Japanese government, we are here to back it up. That is where Japan stands. Thank you so much for scheduling this event into your busy schedule, Mr. Koizumi. I do hope that on climate crisis, I do hope that you continue to exercise your leadership.